There it is. Now you go.
Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Bonita Springs Board of Land Use Hearings and Adjustment and Zoning Board of Appeals regular meeting for Tuesday, January 15, 2013. Please rise for our invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we ask that you bless this board in our decision-making. Bless our country, our leaders. Watch over our troops and bring them home safely. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Chairman Nussbaum,
Here.
Robert Inserpi,
Here,
Wes Norris, Roger Brunswick, Pete Pastori,
Here.
Richard Donnelly,
Here.
Frank Lyles.
Here. We're missing Mr. Brunswick and Mr. Norris. But before we get started for the year 2013, I'd like to welcome our newest member, Richard. Welcome.
Thank you. We can begin with the first case. The first case is COP 12-2234 BOS Bonita Oak Square, which is in District 3, located at 4450, 4480 Bonita Beach Road, requesting a special exception to allow outdoor consumption on premises. I need to swear in witnesses to proceed with the case. If I may have, if you're interested in this particular case, so if you're here for Palmyra or you're here for Mr. Ellswick, I don't need to swear you in at this time, but if you are involved in this case, please raise your right hand. Okay. Now raise your right. If Mr. Ambrosi, I recognize, and the gentleman over there, do you swear firm testimony you're going to provide today is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Now, we do have a few expert witnesses. I do want to, Ms. DeFola-Hagan, you've been previously been tendered as an expert in land use and planning, as well as Mr. Dolmer, you've been previously tendered as an expert in land use and planning. And let me just, for purposes of the court reporter, get the names on the record of the other folks that will be speaking today. First, the applicant. If you want to state your name and...
Douglas Grant.
Thank you. Sir, you raised your... Okay, no? Mr. Ambrosi?
Ray Ambrosi.
It's okay.
A-M-B-R-O-Z-Y. Okay. And
Enver Bayraktarovich.
I think we're going to need you to repeat that a little slower. And
Enver Bayraktarovich.
Edward Bayraktarovich. Bayraktarovich. We'll work on spelling later, possibly, when we get to paper. Which brings me to another item before we start the case, and Ms. DeFola-Hagan will start the case in a second. Please fill out these papers so the city clerk has the correct spelling, the applicant doesn't need to. Fill out the papers so we have the correct spelling of any names for the record, as well as it makes it very clear for us, so we appreciate it. Ms. DeFola-Hagan, if you'd proceed.
Just before you proceed, let the record show that Mr. Brunswick is in attendance. Thank you.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
The case before us this morning, or for the record, Jennifer DeFola-Hagan, Planner Community Development. The case before us this morning is Bonita Oak Square. It's for consumption on premises. The case number is COP 12-02234-BOS. Again, the request before us today is for special exception to allow for outdoor consumption on premises. Also part of this application is for joint use of the parking lot. There are two parcels as part of the subject property, and we'll be addressing those later in the presentation, but that is part of the request. Overall, staff recommends approval of the applicant's request. The future land use of the property is general commercial. The current zoning is commercial. And also, the current use is an existing commercial plaza with office, retail, and restaurant uses. I provided an area location map just for your reference. To the north of the subject property, again, here is the subject property, is the American Legion's Post, C1. To the east is the Bonita Beach Walk condominiums, also zoned C1. To the south is Bonita Beach Road, and also to the south of Bonita Beach Road is Collier County. And to the west sits a 7-Eleven, zoned C1, and then residential units, zoned TFC2. And you can see there's a few of those right here to the northwest of the property. Also, for your reference, I've highlighted with stars the 3 areas on the subject location that are currently part of this request for consumption on premises. I've outlined the conditions as part of this request. There are a few, but I do want to make sure that we go over them for the record. The first condition of the request would be that the outdoor seating is limited to the existing restaurant locations as depicted on the site map that I just went over. The second condition is that the serving of alcohol beverages for outdoor consumption on premises shall be restricted between the hours of 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 12 a.m. Friday and Saturday, and 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. on Sunday. And this area is limited to the 1,105 square feet for the restaurant locations as shown on the previous slide. As part of this request, outdoor live music and entertainment is prohibited. Piped-in music must meet the standards of City of Bonita Springs Noise Ordinance number 06-04. That's a standard condition for all of our outside seating for consumption on premises. Condition number 4 includes that the tables for the outdoor seating area shall be located as not to impede any type of pedestrian traffic and will provide adequate access defined by ADA as well as Florida Life and Safety Code. Again, usual condition. Number 5, the special exception does include, as I mentioned previously, the joint use of the parking. The shared parking does come with a shared parking agreement that was attached in your backup. Basically, it's limited to the following features of this condition. Number A is that the city approval of the shared parking agreement on the 2 subject straps is limited to accommodate the required 9 additional parking spaces generated by the new 580 square feet outdoor seating area for Tuscan Bistro. I'll go over this a little later in the request, but in general, in 2012, Tuscan Bistro expanded their establishment to include an outdoor seating area. This outdoor deck triggered the need for an additional 9 parking spaces per the Land Development Code. So this shared agreement is in place to accommodate the need for those extra parking spaces. 5B states that the written joint parking agreement must be recorded within 30 days of approval by the city attorney's office with the clerk of courts at the applicant's expense. 5C states that the city will monitor this parking, and should a condition arise about the operation, the city retains authority to review this parking agreement and adjust accordingly with Land Development Code 4-2018. 5D states that any time in the future, should the use of the property change from a restaurant on the subject parcel for the Tuscan Bistro specifically to a more parking-intensive use, that adequate parking must be provided in compliance with the Land Development Code at the time of the application, or a revision to the to the shared parking agreement would be required. 5E states that also at any time in the future, should the use of the property in general change from a shopping center to a more parking-intensive use, again, appropriate parking demand studies would be required to demonstrate that the current shared parking agreement does justify that intensive use, or would need to be, again, amended in order to meet the more intensive use at that time. And 5F states that if the parties of the shared parking agreement amend, alter, or dissolve, that the shared parking agreement would need to be modified, or it would dissolve if those entities are no longer at that site, and the city must approve this change prior to any alterations becoming final. So if the entities, the agreement, or the uses on the site change, then that would need to be reflected in the parking agreement. Again, in general, the nature of the request requires that a special exception be applied for. This comes from your Land Development Code requiring that any establishment which provides outdoor seating areas for its patrons consuming alcoholic beverages that falls within 500 feet of a religious facility, a school, a daycare, a park, or a dwelling unit under separate ownership does need to apply for the special exception. The proposed outdoor seating areas are in close proximity to residential uses, as you saw on the slide that shows the aerial. Therefore, this special exception approval is required. And any noise or possible nuisance that would arise from the service of alcohol for the outdoor seating areas, staff felt that would be minimal, especially in consideration of the environment and the neighborhood of the commercial activity nearby. So staff has conditioned this request accordingly as we saw fit to meet any of those possible nuisances or noise issues that may arise. Again, I wanted to outline the outside consumption of premises hours. The applicant has indicated that these hours here are the general operating hours of all of the businesses. I didn't list the businesses specifically. I just gave you a window of time that would be the worst case scenario as far as when, not worst case, but actually a usual case of when the hours of operation are for all three restaurants. They encompass 11 a.m. through 11 p.m. Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. through 2 a.m. on Friday and Saturday, and 11:30 a.m. Till 10 p.m. on Sunday. Staff took this into consideration and recommends these be altered just a tad bit to reflect not only a noise ordinance, but also consistency with other outdoor approvals for service of alcohol throughout the city. So staff is proposing that the hours be restricted to 11 a.m. through 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m. through 12 a.m. Friday and Saturday, and 11 a.m. through 8 p.m. on Sunday. However, please note this does not mean that patrons cannot be outdoors at these areas. This just specifically states that the service of alcohol needs to be limited outdoors only to these hours. So patrons can still be outside enjoying their meal, having conversation, having dessert, but the service of alcohol would be restricted specifically to these hours. Again, I want to touch on the joint parking. I did briefly mention that this is to accommodate for the 9 spaces that were additionally needed by the expansion of Tuscan Bistro. There was an LDO that was applied for this expansion for the outdoor seating area, and this required the 9 additional spots to accommodate that expansion. We do have a little bit of change in the special exception requirements these days. As of January 18, the requirement that would require special exception approval to apply to joint use of parking will no longer be in effect. It does change, and that would be something that would not no longer trigger a special exception. However, because the applicant applied for this in the fall, they did still fall under the requirements of the Land Development Code at that time, thus the need for the special exception approval for the joint use of parking. Staff just felt that we're already going forward for the outdoor consumption. Let's tie it together with the joint use of parking and go ahead and streamline this for the applicants. So in general, again, Bonita Oak Square is comprised of a multi-use shopping complex with a variety of different retail and office uses. Therefore, these uses within this complex have different peak parking hours, and staff felt, and also looking at some of our resources, that these peak parking demands did change, and they fluctuated based on the uses. So the shared parking agreement justified this, and staff felt it would supplement the 9 parking spaces on site to meet the demands of the restaurant and the office uses at different hours. So we are in agreement that the shared parking agreement at this time would be appropriate for this location. In general, the special exception as conditioned is consistent with the goals, objectives, policies of the Bonita Springs Comp Plan. It meets or exceeds all the performance and locational standards set forth in the Land Development Code for this particular use. It will be compatible and sufficient to the existing and planned uses. It will not cause damage, harm, nuisance, or any other problems associated with the persons or the property as conditioned. and will be in compliance with all the general zoning provisions and supplemental regulations within the Land Development Code. So staff and the applicant is here to field any of your questions you may have and concerns to this request. So with that, I turn it over to you, Chairman.
I have a question, comment number 5A in the staff report.
The condition 5A?
Yeah, condition 5A. It talks about the parking spaces generated by the new 580 square feet of outdoor seating.
Yes.
What does that equate to in number of patrons that would come into the restaurant?
For how many people, 580 square feet on tables versus
Well, the outdoor seating is justified by the fire district's table count. Is that correct? So it's a mixture of also the tables and the table count for that, as well as the hours for the different types of uses. So, and the square footage of the interior restaurant. But the way that staff looked at it was for the additional 580 square feet for the outdoor seating area.
You may wish to ask the applicant how much his intent is.
Okay. Which was my next question, Mr. Grant. If you added up the seating for the 3 outdoor places that are going to have the alcohol consumption, what would you say would be the total number of seats or total number of patrons?
Tuscan Bistro is it's probably adding maybe 35 to 40 seats on the deck. Sea Level has, I would say, 20 seats outside, 20 seats, and Gatsby's Pizza, which is yet to open, but they're probably only going to have room for 3 or 4 tables outside. The strip center, if you're aware of it, it's in a corner, and so there's a little there's a little dead space there in the corner that they could have some outdoor seating, but they're not going to be able to have much seating there. So I would say the total is probably an additional 60 to 70 seats between all 3 restaurants. Most of the patrons there are kind of destination. You know, there's a real estate company, there's a title company, there's an alterations girl, there's an interior decorator, there's a bank, and so I would say by 5 o'clock, the only parking would be for the 3 restaurants. There is a yoga studio there, and she may have some classes in the evening that would require parking, but that's it's pretty well cleared out by 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
And how would patrons enter the outside sitting area? Could they enter it from the parking lot, or do they have to go through the restaurant?
I don't know if you're privy to the drawing. We've added walkovers, 2 walkovers from the shopping center, which has helped the egress to the Tuscan Bistro. And you know, my wife and I, we just really wanted to create a little town center if we could there, so people can walk. People may have a glass of wine at one place and go over and eat at the Tuscan Bistro. They may, you know, order a pizza from Gatsby's and go have their wine and sit outside at Sea Level. So we're trying to create a little. We're not going to be Mercado, but we just try to create something there.
I have a question.
Sure.
Was the Tuscan Bistro, the outdoor deck that was built, was that previously approved? Was that?
That was approved in 2012. And Chairman, for your clarification, fire did cap the outdoor seating for Tuscan Bistro at 38 seats.
38, okay. North of your location is the American Legion post?
Yes.
Do they serve alcohol to their members as well? Do you know?
They
Yeah.
do.
Okay.
I don't know what their hours of operation, I mean, we used to go over there and get lunch and bring it back, but as my office is right there in 4450, the strip center, but I don't know their hours of operation.
And you have leases with each of the different restaurant owners?
I do.
Okay. Do they all expire at the same time, or are the terms of the leases, are they staggered?
They are staggered, and there are options in their leases, so whether, we want them to all be successful, but whether they exercise their options,
And in the event a lease is not renewed and a new potential renter doesn't agree with the arrangement, what would happen then?
I don't see for Sea Level and for Gatsby's, I mean, I suppose somebody could go and open something different than a restaurant in one of these spaces. The Tuscan Bistro at one time was the 7-Eleven, if you remember. So I don't know, we would rewrite the leases and go to the city for guidance.
Also, Chairman, if this use is approved today, it would stay with the land, so that option would always be possible for those existing restaurants.
And any change in the parking, they would have to come back?
Correct.
Can I ask a question, please? The last page, I notice it says that, I don't know if it's Bristow or Tuscan Briscoe would be able to qualify for a liquor license or a food license. Last page of the...
Yeah. Tuscan Bistro, the way I understand it, if they have a certain amount of seats, which now we believe they will have,
100 seats,
and if
yeah.
they have, and if they have access to a certain amount of parking, they can qualify for going beyond beer and wine to a full liquor license. So it is a benefit to them, obviously, if we can do this.
Yeah, that's if they have the 100 seats in the 3,000 square foot building, right? And the parking.
Right.
Well, I thought maybe they were just gonna, like, Bristol would buy a liquor license, just have that without food. That's why I asked the question.
Right. But I do think there are,
Now, the Bristol, there's two different Bristows. One, Bristol beer and wine, or wine and beer, and the other one's Tuscan Briscoe, right?
yeah, years ago, when what it was, the Toucan Grill, they had their own liquor license. And my wife and I purchased that building. We purchased 4450, the strip center, in 2003. We purchased what is 4480, the end of 2007. And the Toucan Grill was going out at that time, but they had their own liquor license. And then,
Oh, that's the one on the
then we
corner.
had Crust Bistro there briefly, and they serve beer and wine, and Tuscan Bistro serves beer and wine.
Yeah, I remember they used to just have a liquor license, no food with it, at Bristow's.
I'm sorry,
On the corner there, that was just beer, that was a whiskey license, it wasn't food license. There was no food involved there, right?
at,
Bristow, wine and beer.
at
There's two Bristows there.
there's the Sea Level, which has minimal food and wine and beer, and then there's the Tuscan Bistro, but,
In other words, they had their own liquor license, they bought one at one time.
right, when they were to the Toucan Grill years ago.
I remember when it was there, it was just strictly the liquor, you know.
And we feel that if they can qualify for the liquor license, it will help their business.
That's all I had.
Any additional questions this time from the board?
Does, Sea Level does not have a liquor license. They have beer and wine only?
Just beer and wine only.
And Gatsby's will have beer and wine.
Gatsby's will have beer and wine, no liquor.
With this additional parking, will those two businesses be eligible to apply for liquor licenses?
Well, the parking only is the equivalent of the needs for the Tuscan Bistro outdoor seating area. Otherwise, the retail complex, since it's a multi-complex with over 5 uses, they share parking. So the need for the 9 additional was only triggered through the outdoor expansion of Tuscan Bistro. So if they meet the requirements, they would be able to apply, but whether they decide to do outdoor or not would be determined by alcohol and beverages.
Sea Level wouldn't qualify.
No.
They only have,
They don't have the
maybe
seating.
even with the outside seating, I think
Too
they
small.
may have 60 seats, maybe.
Yeah, probably so.
The only way they could get one was to purchase, get one from the state.
Right.
Yeah, and it'd be strictly a liquor store license. Okay.
Mr. Inserpi, any questions?
No, thank you.
Since there's no additional questions at this time, I'd like to open the public portion of this application. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak for or against the applicant? Please step forward.
Morning, Happy New Year's. My name is Ray Ambrosi. I live in a neighborhood 3 blocks north of the complex. I'm also in real estate and a small developer. I meet a lot of seasonal owners in the neighborhood. I think this would be a wonderful opportunity. A lot of people have dinner out, they like to sit out and have conversation. It adds to the sense of city and closeness here in Bonita Springs. It's consistent with the fish market, with Coconut Jacks, with Doc's Beach House, and further north on Hickory Island, Big Hickory Seafood Grill. So I think the staff did a nice job in recommending it. I hope you support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I need to swear you in. Please come up. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm testimony you're going to provide is truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sue Ellen Mathers. I also live in the neighborhood, and I'm also in real estate. I just think the whole thing that Doug Grant is trying to do there is wonderful for our community, for our neighborhood. Sea Level has become, I call it our Cheers. It's a place people from all over that neighborhood come and we meet. And I've always felt that Bonita Springs needed some places that made us feel like we had a little downtown, a little gathering place. There were a lot of things that we could go to one spot for. And I think what's happening there is just great. I go there often, many of my friends do. We meet neighbors there, and I just encourage you to support this because I think what is going on there is really good. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? If there's no additional speakers, I'd like to close the public portion. Are there any additional questions from the board?
I make a motion to accept.
Mr. Pastore has made a motion to accept.
I'll second.
That's with the staff report, with all the conditions, correct?
Yeah.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call?
Chairman Nussbaum,
Yes?
Robert Inserpi,
Yes.
Roger Brunswick,
Yes?
Pete Pastore,
Yes.
Richard Donnelly,
Abstain?
Frank Lyles.
Yes.
And you'll file at 8B in this file, Mr. Donnelly? A Form 8B?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tell him only if he chooses.
Hi, Roger.
My wife's
Nice to see you.
Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year to you. Thank you, my dear.
Where's our board, Frank? Happy New
Roy,
Year.
haven't seen you all year.
I haven't.
She gets
Where's
it.
Wes?
Do you need
I have
a
no
copy
idea.
of one?
What happened to our new member, Wes?
8B, Form 8B, he was.
Okay, you need just a blank one, right? Okay.
Pack it up.
Hey, Richard. Hey,
No, these guys
You didn't
from your
go to-
district. Hickory Boulevard.
out of here. No, I know where, I know all of them. Go this one. Before.
Even when they give this out, I still can't read it.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's powerful.
Are you ready? Okay.
I have to get a little more coffee.
Thank you. I'll call the next case, which is PD 12-02177 BOS Ellswick RPD, located at 26385 Hickory Boulevard in Bonita Springs. It's a request to rezone .23 acres from C1 to RPD. At this time, I will swear in the witnesses. Please raise your right hands if you are planning to testify in this particular case or speak on the record in this case. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're going to provide is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And we have, Mr. Schrupp, you're also testifying, or, okay. Lawyers, as officers of the court, we don't testify, but sometimes they like to, just in case they are fact witnesses, and say something. Ms. Ekblad and Ms. Genson, you've been previously tendered as experts in land use and planning. I also have Mr. Harvey Berger here, who raised his right hand. That's the only other person, correct, for this case? I'm sorry, Ms. Ekblad, please proceed, or Mr. Schropp, either one.
Thanks. Just briefly for your record, my name is Russell Schropp. I'm an attorney with the Henderson Franklin law firm with offices here in Bonita and also Fort Myers. We've been representing the owner of this property since he acquired it. Mr. Ellswick is in the audience there, sitting in the third row. Took title under the name CBS by the Bay LLC, but he is the sole owner and managing member of the LLC. Ms. Ekblad is here, as well as she's our planner from Morris Depew and Associates. This is a fairly simple request to rezone about 1/4 of an acre on Hickory Boulevard from C1 to RPD to allow a duplex to be constructed on the project, on the property. It's fairly straightforward. I'm just going to turn it over to Ms. Ekblad to run you through it. She's been previously accepted as an expert in this forum in land use planning and zoning, also accepted in the county and other forums, and I'd ask that you accept her as an expert in land use and planning today. I don't know if I've got any objection or concurrence from Ms. Vance, but certainly appreciate her acceptance in those areas at this time.
So you can previously tendered as an expert. Please talk about it.
Good morning.
Please proceed.
For the record, again, Tina Ekblad with Morse Few Associates. I just skipped the first two slides. Russell covered most of the information. Just for your information, the aerial on the screen demonstrates the subject property, which is located at 26385 Hickory Boulevard. The formal request is to rezone .23 acres from the C1 commercial zoning to residential plan development. This will allow a one duplex structure on the property with 2 dwelling units. Just to familiarize you with the location, just north of the subject property is the Beechwood on the Bay condo. Just to the west, across Hickory Boulevard, is the Woodsong condo and the Brooks Beach Club recreation facility. To the south of the subject property is the Beechwood condo, the Brooks Beach Club parking facility, and to the east is the bay. The subject property is currently vacant. The former multi-unit condo building was demolished due to structural concerns. There are 2 existing docks on the property, which were permitted in 2007, and those will remain. The future land use of the property is general commercial. This district covers a wide range of commercial uses as well as multifamily and limits the height to 35 feet of any structures due to its island location. This district does not allow single-family residential. It only allows multifamily. Multifamily is defined as 2 or more units. This includes duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. The request, again, being a .23 acre lot, only allows 2 dwelling units. That's the maximum density allowable on this property. And the applicant has agreed to the height limitation of 35 feet. The zoning of the property is currently the C1 commercial district. This regulates continuing commercial uses and some existing residential uses. A duplex is a permitted use within this zoning district. Unfortunately, the property does not meet the development regulations of this district. And so we've gone ahead and requested a residential plan development. The lot was recorded in 1951 at 50 feet wide, which no longer meets today's standards and is therefore considered legally non-conforming. Ooh, that's not good. I apologize about that. That was the master concept plan, which is in your packets. I have copies. Would anybody like a hard copy to see in front of them?
I think so.
Yes? Okay.
Which, this one here? Just the one?
Should be in the staff report.
And the document that Jen is handing out, the master concept plan, is on page 7. It demonstrates that the, the unit will have a 3,800 square foot building footprint. That will be for parking, and then 2 stories over the parking. There will be 1 unit per story. The small existing accessory structure in the rear of the property will remain. As I mentioned, the 2 existing docks will remain. There will be a turnaround in the front of the property to allow vehicles to enter and exit Hickory Boulevard forward rather than reversing onto the boulevard. There is a building to the north, the Beechwood condo, and the separation between the condo building and the duplex will be approximately 17 feet. This exceeds the minimum code requirement of 10 feet. We have asked for some design flexibility in the master concept plan via 1 deviation, which you see on the screen. Residential plan developments are required to have a 15-foot setback from the property boundary. Due to the existing lot's width of 50 feet, we have asked for a reduction of that setback to 5 feet. This lot, being 50 feet wide and approximately 200 feet in depth, is consistent with the lots surrounding it, which are within the Bonita Beach subdivision plat. These platted lots that are across the street and to the south are afforded relief in the Land Development Code to a 5-foot setback. We are asking for the same relief. This will provide compatibility with the proposed development to the existing residences that are constructed, and it does still maintain that minimum 10-foot separation between the proposed building and the building to the north. We agree with the conditions provided in the staff report, which provide that the existing accessory structure may remain, that the docks are considered accessory to the residential unit and cannot be rented or leased, and only the existing 4 slips are allowed, that all exotic plants on the subject property will be removed, and we will provide 6 native trees, and any right-of-way permits must be obtained for the driveway location. We believe that this request is consistent with the City of Bonita's comprehensive plan. Policy 1.1.14 is the general commercial district, which allows commercial and multifamily uses as well as providing that maximum height limitation. We believe that our request is consistent with all of these requirements. Policy 1.1.3 and 1.1.4 provide for the maximum height limitation and the allowable uses. Again, we feel that our request is consistent with these policies. Objective 1.11 establishes that services must be available to the subject property prior to development. The property does have access to Hickory Boulevard for traffic. It does have access to Bonita Springs utilities, and it does have curbside service for solid waste disposal. For the transportation requirements, policy 1.7.4 and 1.8.2 provide that proposed developments are compliant with the Bikeways and Walkways Facilities Plan, and they will not encroach upon existing right-of-ways. Hickory Boulevard is on the Bikeways and Walkways Facility Plan. There is a sidewalk in front of the subject property currently. This sidewalk will remain, and any damage that may occur via the construction of the proposed development would be repaired. And any encroachments that may occur due to drainage and/or the driveway will be permitted appropriately. Objective 1.8, Policy 5.1.4 and 5.1.6 relating to the coastal high hazard area. This development is actually more compliant than the previous use with these policies. It brings the subject property in line with the allowable density in this area of Hickory Island. It is an infill request, and any new construction would be compliant with the city's flood damage protection ordinance. We believe that we are consistent with the findings as referenced in the city's land development code, which state that we have proven entitlement to the rezoning or special exception demonstrating compliance with the various codes and regulations of the city, that we will meet or exceed all performance and locational standards, that we are consistent with the densities and intensities set forth in the comp plan, we are compatible with the existing and planned uses of the surrounding area, and we will not place an undue burden upon the existing transportation or planned infrastructure facilities. We do not believe that the request will adversely affect environmentally critical areas or natural resources. We believe that the requested duplex is appropriate at the location, that the conditions are applicable to provide sufficient safeguards to the public interest, and they are reasonably related to the impacts that the development would propose, and that sufficient public facilities are currently available to the subject property. And I'm available for any questions that you might have.
At the waterfront, there's no mangroves along the bulkhead or by the docks, correct?
No, not that we're aware of at this point.
Okay, and the structure that's in the rear of the property, that looked like it was somewhat in disrepair. Will,
It's tore down,
if it's going to stay, will it be brought up
Yes,
to
and
whatever
any
standard?
structural concerns would be taken care of through a repair. However, the structure would not be expanded in size.
Okay. And on the right-hand side, if you're looking from the street facing the lot, there's fencing, and on property side, there's board-on-board fencing. Same thing as whose fence is that?
It was not demonstrated in the survey, so we'd have to do some digging to determine exactly the ownership of that fence.
But if it is on the property, it would be brought up to standard? There's some boards missing, and
It would either be taken down or brought up to standard, yes.
same thing on the opposite side. It looks like there was a street light at one time, or a telephone pole, looks like it was abandoned.
That I'm not aware of.
Will that be
Again,
removed,
if
or?
if that's not going to be utilized, it would be removed as part of the building permit and construction process.
You
If it's on
familiar
our
with that?
property.
Right.
If it's on the subject property.
It is, right?
I do not know, and I don't know if the survey reflects that.
It does not.
Okay.
Okay. And you mentioned that there will be curbside pickup for garbage and recycling?
I have a question. You done, Mark?
Go ahead.
Okay. The driveway for this parcel,
Yes.
is that going to be like a partial driveway in the front, or is that going to run the whole length of the property?
It's currently proposed to stop midway to the structure so that a turnaround could be provided so that vehicles could enter and exit in a forward motion. And from the draft architecturals that we've seen, there will be a garage that the driveway would lead up to. So it won't run the entire boundary of the property, no.
And the back part that we're leading to the docks will be all grassy area? Is that what?
It would be landscaped and/or
area.
possibly pervious pavers. Those items haven't been determined yet.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question about the setback issue. 5 feet, is that, how does that measure up to other setback requirements in the neighborhood?
A majority of the neighborhood is platted via the Bonita Beach subdivision. As a result of that plat, the Land Development Code allows those lots to have a 5-foot setback by right. And so this development would actually be consistent with those lots that surround it and have that setback already.
Does the condominium area to the north, do they have a issue, do we know, with the setback that you propose?
For the record, Jacqueline Genson, a gentleman who is here in the audience did come by yesterday, and he had some concerns on the proposed setback. Other than that, public comment's been relatively minor, but this is yesterday was the first time that a setback concern arose from the public.
Do you feel that changing from a C1 to RPD would be less intense?
Yes, I do.
And I noticed that the utilities are currently in the front, so that would basically stay in the same location?
We would work with Bonita Springs Utility through the permitting process if that needed to be revised.
And I think I heard you mention that the parking will be under the structure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you have to comply with the 30-foot height maximum, so what do you anticipate would be the maximum height?
I believe the maximum floodplain height there is 16 feet, so you would be allowed 35 feet above that, so in total you're at 51. I'm bad at math, so somebody correct me if that's not right.
Right.
Okay. Good.
At what time that was I think Stillwell had an office there, didn't a real estate office?
I'm sorry,
At the
can you
building?
repeat that?
Yeah, I got it.
Mr. Pistori, you need to speak in your microphone so we can hear.
Hello.
Didn't I show you that before?
And just for comparison, how tall would you say the structure is that's next to the parcel?
I believe the condo is 4 stories over
Stories,
parking.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. We have any other questions?
And there's no deviation to the height
No.
in this, so they will have to comply with the Hickory, special height restrictions for Hickory Boulevard.
Just want to make sure when she mentioned that parking would be under the structure. Any additional questions at this time from the board? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At this point in time, I'd like to open the public portion of this application. Oh, not yet, sorry.
We're very sensitive.
I thought you were walking out.
All right, good morning. For the record, Jacqueline Jensen with Community Development. Staff is It does agree with the applicant's findings in their presentation, and I'm just going to go over our presentation. Some of this will be repetitive in nature, so I will try to be as efficient as possible. Again, with the request is to rezone 0.23 acres from C1 to an RPD to allow one duplex unit. Staff did recommend approval with conditions of the applicant's request. As Ms. Ekblad said, this is the location. Here's Hickory Boulevard, which is a 2-lane arterial owned and maintained by Lee County Department of Transportation. You have the Brooks Beach Club parking area to the south. This is the subject property. These are the condominiums. You got another set of condominiums across the street, and then you have the Brooks Beach Club off-site private recreational facility across the road as well. And again, just to reiterate, the surrounding properties feature land use designation, zoning, and uses. This is also Zone C1. It is general commercial, and it allows multifamily uses. To the south is the Brooks Beach Club. It also has a general commercial land use category, and its zone commercial plan development. To the east, we have the Estero Bay and part of, I think this is the Bonita Bay PUD, Zone AG, but it is a preserve. And then to the west across the street, you have the Windsong condominiums, and then again, the Brooks Beach Club private recreational facility. The future land use map does permit 10 units an acre. It also permits commercial uses, but again, this request is for residential, and it only allows multifamily. It does not permit single-family dwelling units. So based on the density range in our land use plan, the applicant is only allowed to request up to 2 units an acre. It is Zone C1, and it is vacant commercial. And I don't think my master concept plan is that much better either. Okay, here's the master concept plan, and it's also in your staff packet as attachment A, and also the applicant provided you a PowerPoint presentation. The master concept plan was distributed to our Public Works Department, to Lee County Department of Transportation, Fire Department, and as well as some other departments within the city, and there were very minor comments. In terms of the driveway connection, Lee County was comfortable with the applicant sliding the driveway connection further to the south. They will be required to get a right-of-way permit at time of building permit application if they're going to make any changes to the driveway or any utility improvements, because that is Lee County's right-of-way. The proposed setback, it is going to exceed the 25-foot requirement that is required in any zoning designation from a locally maintained road. It's a 25-foot setback for a road. For the rear, the Land Development Code does require a 25-foot water body setback. The applicant is proposing that for the principal structure and any new accessory structures. Again, with the deviation for the side setback, I'll go over that some more. But yes, a lot of these older platted communities, there is a section in our Land Development Code where single-family homes, they're allowed 10% of their lot width or 5 feet, whichever is more restrictive, when they go ahead and pull a building permit. And then the height, there is a special height restriction for Little Hickory Island. So at time of building permit, we will be looking to make sure that it does meet that definition for height, and you cannot ask for a variance or deviation from that requirement. So in general, that is the master concept plan. Again, the deviation. The Land Development Code does require a 15-foot perimeter setback. However, there have been some cases that have been before you where this board and ultimately City Council has approved deviations for a less restrictive setback. I don't know if you remember the Thompson RPD, that was approved with a reduced perimeter setback. So there has been case precedent where a smaller setback or the elimination of the perimeter setback has been approved. And staff did agree that a 5-foot setback would be appropriate. Essentially, the structure, with it being a duplex with one unit above the other, it will almost look like a single-family home. So aesthetically from the outside, you really wouldn't be able to tell that they're 2 separate units. So in terms of keeping with the neighborhood, the compatibility, staff was comfortable with recommending approval for that 5-foot side setback. Comprehensive plan consistency, again, special height restriction, they won't exceed the 35 feet as defined for that portion of the city. So they are consistent with the land use plan. Allowable uses, a lot of the residents on Hickory Island have voiced to the city time and time again that they prefer residential uses. This property has been subject of many potential purchases where they've wanted to put commercial in, and there was some concerns from the neighborhood. So before the applicant filed, we did recommend that they talk with certain groups, the Bonita Beach Improvement Association, some other concerned citizens that are very involved in Hickory Island. So they did meet with them ahead of time just so that this request could, again, go through as smoothly and as efficient as possible. So I think some of the residents are very happy that a residential use is going in on this property versus a commercial use. So again, staff was very much comfortable with this request and found it compatible and consistent with other allowable uses along Hickory Island. The land use category, again, multifamily only is permitted for a residential use. So they're requesting 2 units, and it does meet the definition of multiple family per our comprehensive plan. In terms of available services, there is access to the site. There's waste removal. Bonita Springs Utilities does have utilities in the right-of-way, so there is access to services. So there will not be a burden on existing infrastructure. This is just to give you some visuals of the surrounding area. This is to the north, the condominiums, where it does look like this is where the parking is, and there's 4 stories. This is some of the buffering that's up towards the right-of-way. This is on the property looking out to the rear. You'll see the Estero Bay and some of the existing docking facilities that is there. You'll see the preserve in the background, which has mangroves, but this property does not. This is the existing accessory structure that staff felt. What we did with that is we said we would let it stay as it is, but we would treat it as a legal non-conforming structure. So in our code, there's a set of parameters of what you can do to that structure. So if they wanted to expand it, they could only expand it if it met current setbacks. So we don't think that this will be able to be expanded than what it exists today. If it is structurally a hazard, there are provisions in the code where they can make those repairs as long as they're not expanding the footprint of the building, height-wise or width-wise. This is the property to the south, the wooden fence, which you did talk about, and then the Brooks Beach Club parking is on the other side. This is across the street. This is the Brooks Beach Club private facility, and these are the other condominiums, which are several stories over parking. In terms of the finding, staff felt that the applicant did demonstrate compliance with LDC Section 3-77. It is appropriate at its location. It's compatible with the existing neighborhood. The deviations as proposed would not jeopardize health, public safety, or welfare. And the master concept plan and conditions are appropriate for the applicant's request. And I am available for any questions.
I have a question. On the thing, it says no buffer required, right? Now, what's going to be there? Just going to be an open space, north and south?
It can be, yes, because LDC Chapter 3 dictates what types of buffers are required based on the existing use that's there and what's proposed. So when you look at that, there's no buffer requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Is the main street considered an evacuation route by the county?
It is an evacuation route for hurricane.
So are there any special requirements that they would have to comply with?
Because there were so many units there before, I mean, they're essentially down zoning, if you will. But they will meet, they don't have to demonstrate any type of additional or mitigate for any additional hurricane impacts. concludes
I
staff's.
guess I'm still concerned on this setback issue. You said you would elaborate on that. You said there had been a conversation with someone who had a problem with it?
Yes. Okay, there was, again, a gentleman did stop by yesterday afternoon, and I went over the request with him. And again, he can speak for himself when he comes up, but I believe he lives right here to the north, and he does have a condo unit on the end. And he's concerned with, you know, a 5-foot setback. He's concerned with blocking views. So those were some of the concerns that he did voice to me. Again, I told him the same information that I explained to this board here, is that the house is going to look like a single-family house. And for all intents and purposes, it may operate as a single-family house. So staff was comfortable with recommending approval of a 5-foot side setback. If this board wishes to do something different, that's always within your powers to do so. So that's kind of the summary of our discussion.
You're not changing any of the rear setbacks, so
No.
the rear setback would be the same as a single-family residential with the view zone that you would have from there.
That's correct. The 25-foot water body setback is the same as any structure that were to come in for permitting.
And he's not being allowed like a pool, above-ground pool or anything like that, that would be within the 25, he's not asking for any of that.
Correct. The way the language is conditioned, if you look at condition 2B, the site development standards, you'll see the minimum setbacks for the street 25 feet, the side 5, the water body rear setback 25 feet, and you'll see a couple of asterisk, and it reverts right back to our land development code. So any structure would have to abide with the setbacks outlined in our land development code.
So if he wanted to put a minimal stairwell that is open, he's allowed to do it out of wood. That's one of the requirements.
Yeah, I mean, the city did approve an amendment just recently, I think it's ordinance 1213, actually, it's the newest one coming through, that will be effective January 18th, where we do allow some permitted encroachments, but they have to meet a very strict standards in terms of 8 foot of clearance. The deck can only be a certain size, railings can only be so high, you can't block view corridors.
Cannot create fire hazards.
Correct, no fire hazards. All right, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time?
The buffering still bothers me a little bit. Because you've got a parking lot adjacent to it, right next to it, I mean, you know. So I mean, I guess it's up to the homeowner, the lot owner, to ensure privacy between both parcels of land.
What the notation refers to is the standard buffers in the city's land development code. So for example, you might see a particular type which requires a specific number of trees and shrubs per foot. We are not obligated to provide that. That does not mean that the homeowner, upon construction, would not put some type of landscaping in. Does that help?
And they'd have no problem doing that.
No.
Okay. All right.
At this point in time, I'd like to open the public portion of this application. Does anyone in the audience who would like to speak for or against the applicant, please step forward.
My name is Harvey Berger.
Speak into the microphone, please.
My name is Harvey Berger. I am a retired builder developer, and there are a few things I don't like. Putting the duplex in here is fine. The lot line should be 7.5 feet because there's no way to walk back to the backyard. If you come checked the building next door to our building, north of our building, 5 feet, zero lot line, or not zero lot line, but it seems to be. There's no way for those people to even cut their shrubbery. There's no way to walk to the backyards. They have a pool deal there. They have an air conditioner there. They come through the condo, which I live in Beechwood on the Bay. They come through our yard. They come to our yard to mow, to cut the trees, to cut the trim. The noise from I think there's a new code that says you have to put your air conditioners up higher now. I'm not sure of that, but I see it on some houses where they put it up on the second floor. I would like them not to be on the north side, so we have to listen to their noise. Their pole that's there, the power comes from that unit, comes off of our transformer. The transformer, the power company will not move that power until it gets ordered by the city. And that lot should have its own transformer. The light was a night light, which they had. But the power goes in front of our building, comes off of our transformer.
Yeah,
So
I observed that all the cables were cut.
Yeah, but the cables come to our power, so they need a new transformer, and they won't do it until the city orders them to do it. Because we've asked them to take the wires down, to clean it all up, and they will not do anything until the city tells them what to do. You've answered most of the other questions. The biggest problem we're going to have with the neighbors, which we had, is they raised the building. Now, this person's probably going in there and have to raise the floor in order to put the garage under. In 5 feet, you can't slope it enough to create the drainage that goes on our property. That's what they did. I complained the last time. Nobody listened, so I would like it in plan and zone to somebody understand that the new development doesn't push all the water on our. They raised the back of their lot, they put in a new wall, seawall, and they raised it almost a foot, which pushed all the water on ours. So then we had to raise the back corner so that their water would still go to the back. That's going to be a big problem on this lot, because if you go back and look at any house back there, when you raise the fill in 5 feet, there's nowhere for the water to go. So it has to go to the lowest spot. And we will happen to be lower because if they raise. I don't know how Plan and Zone gets involved in this, but
Question. When you say that, you're talking about they, are you referring to the building to the north of your condominium?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
if you would go look at it, all of their water does not go to the back of that lot. It goes on ours. And we have water there that's 1.5 feet deep. We all complained, and nobody said there's any rules that says what to do. So that's what I think we need something ahead of time, because when I developed, we allowed for that. But in Plan and Zone or Plan Unit should allow for that, but nobody knows how to enforce it. So when they put footing in, they'll raise it up in 5 feet, it just goes straight on down. I don't have the answer. They could put a footing and make it flat to take the water out, but that's not the normal way since I've been in Florida. And the backyard will be very small according to the print. Will only be 25 feet. And I checked on it yesterday, there's 2 palm trees. If they go to the palm trees, it will only be 28 feet, the backyard, which will be a very small backyard for it. But I can understand why he's pushing the building to the back in order to get the round parking for the front. I mean, it's not that I don't understand it, And there again, where's the water gonna go? The instant they fill any in the backyard, it's going on our lot. So something has to be figured out, because we take all the water from the north, now we'll take all the water from the south. That's about all I can say. But I think you need to get the transformer changed, because they will not change it without a city order. And that pole, all the power comes over to we have 2 transformers in front of there. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Berger, would you prefer to see a commercial development of some kind?
Like I said, it's fine. I just like things to happen, like normally it would be 7.5 foot on the side yard. Your windows are going to be further apart. Now they're going to be right up. If the air conditioners sit on that side of the building, we'll hit their noise. If they could put the air conditionings on the south side of the building, it's a parking lot. It's not a big problem. But how to organize all these, I don't find anybody in the city to go to get anything organized. The water, the raise, everything. I mean, I tried on the other time. Nobody is there. Everybody puts it on somebody else, and it's not their problem. So, and that's why I'm here.
Now, at the condo, where the outside pool is, there is some buffering, and there is a fence line.
There is a fence line.
Yeah,
And
so I'm assuming that belongs to the condo?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been surveyed, and it was checked when it was put in. Anything
Thank
else?
you.
Thank you.
Isn't the current zoning is 5 feet from the sides and 7.5 feet from the back of the property? Is that the
Current
way I
zoning
read it?
is C1, so you would revert back to the C1 districts. However, because it's a non-conforming lot, then you have to go back to the non-conforming section. So it is an exercise.
Okay, in other words, I thought it was 5 feet from the sides and, you know, 7.5
For
from
single-family residential, if you're on a legal non-conforming lot, you are allowed 10% of your lot width or 5 feet, whichever is the most restrictive.
Well, if they go to residential, they have to conform to that policy then, right?
Well, right now, they're requesting an RPD, which allows you to establish your own development regulations if city council so decides to approve them. If I may, can I just address some of
Sure, I was going to ask how
Harvey's
do you...
concerns? Again, this board is definitely welcome to propose any conditions that you feel would protect health, safety, and welfare. But in my zoning history, I've never seen conditions where, you know, mechanical equipment on residential. But it does make sense. I agree, it does make sense to put on the south side, because it is a commercial parking lot. And yes, because of the Florida Building Code, and this is in a flood zone and what we call a velocity zone, the code does require that the AC mechanical equipment is elevated. So yes, the gentleman is correct that it would be elevated in the air. So that is something to look into. Regarding the drainage concerns, all single-family and villas, because this will not trigger a development order per Chapter 3, they will have to demonstrate at building permit that they meet the city's drainage ordinance. So there have been many times where single-family homes or duplexes will come in, and our city engineer works with the architects and the contractors to make sure that things drain properly, whether it's through a roof gutter system or some type of French drain. And we also work very closely with Lee County DOT, you know, if they can take on the water in their right-of-way. So we do look at that through our building permit process. And those were some of the things that I can touch on. I can look into the city transformer issue with Lee County DOT and our Public Works Department, if you'd like.
I don't think the applicant is proposing any type of lighting that was previously there on that pole.
No, we're not. And if we could just briefly respond to some of the concerns
Sure.
for the record, I'd appreciate it. And Tina, I'll start, and maybe Tina will add in this, anything I miss. With regard to the backyard being small, as Mr. Burgert mentioned, that is a function of needing to have some driveway and turnaround area in the front, and so that's why the building has been pushed as far back to the back as possible. The drainage, as Jackie indicated, will be worked out at time of building permit. It is a standard requirement that will need to be addressed, and we recognize that, but that will be done at building permit stage. With regard to the transformer and the electrical service, again, all that will be worked out at development order stage. We'll be happy, or building permit stage. We'll be happy to cooperate with the city now or at building permit stage with regard to the transformer and the the lines and things of that nature. But that will all be worked out, I'm sure, as the project moves forward and development occurs. With regard to the AC on the north side, we'll be happy to stipulate or commit that the air conditioning unit will be placed on the south side, adjacent to the parking lot. That seems reasonable, given that there's a parking lot to our south and condominium to the north. And with regard to the setback, and again, Tina, if you have anything that I would miss, please chime in. But the 5-foot setback is, I think, what has become the norm for residential along Hickory, because they're 50-foot wide lots, and maintaining a 15-foot setback from the side simply is difficult to work with in a residential setting on a 50-foot wide lot. And so I respectfully request and suggest that a 5-foot setback on both sides would be appropriate for this residential use. They will still maintain, as I believe Tina indicated, a 17-foot setback from building to building, which meets your code, and I don't think is any impediment to the public health, safety, and welfare. Tina, did I miss anything?
No, I would just add that many of the already developed lots that are single-family on Hickory Boulevard do have those setbacks already, and so it would be compatible with the existing development.
And I guess the comment from Mr. Burgert that people will not be able to pass along a 5-foot setback on either side, honestly, they'll pass underneath the house. You're talking about 2 units here that Mr. Ellswick will use for himself and his family, and if somebody's going from the front yard to the backyard, they'll pass underneath the building through the parking garage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jackie, do you have anything else to add to that?
I don't.
No? Okay.
Although, if you do want to add some conditions, we just need to
Maybe
work
for
with the
Audrey.
city attorney.
Audrey, may I ask you a question? Does the city have to give the order to put that transformer up?
As I understand it, I mean,
I don't
no, I mean, we don't give orders to Florida Power and Light.
That's right.
And
No. In
it's
other
a
words, that was
county
the-
right-of-way.
They would just have to modify that transformer to accommodate that, right?
If the
what I would
building code
anticipate.
requires that transformer to be relocated, during the building process, they'll work with Florida Power and Light to move it so that it's in a consistent location. But Florida Power and Light doesn't move things unless they are told to by the property owner. I mean, I don't have jurisdiction,
you.
other than I have a franchise, but if I tried to assert franchise authority on a transformer, I don't think that would occur.
And she's right, the property owner.
I would be told where to go from.
A work order.
So I believe we would like to add that additional condition in to relocate the air conditioning unit from the north to south side.
Do we,
Or in the least
South
south side, to the least intrusive location.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Mr. Berger's brought up some very valid concerns, and we appreciate that. This board appreciates that. I also think that the developer has, in good faith, indicated a willingness to work out the details through the permitting process to address the drainage concerns, the light pole and the transformer issue, and certainly the air conditioning and relocating that to the south side. Having expressed that willingness, I move for approval.
I'll second.
I have a question on that. Mr. Berger brought it up, and it's, about the privacy on that parcel of land. People walking through. Well, why can't we just request that some kind of a buffer be put in on the north side, so this way it wouldn't interfere with the people that live north of the proposed property? That's what they're concerned about.
That would further diminish.
Very
the-
restrained
know
side. It
that.
could also be
I
placed
know,
on the
but it's-
condominium
it would
property
diminish
to
the
the
setback,
north.
Well, there's a fence there now. There's a wood fence there now.
Yeah, right.
And if you put a buffer there, a landscape buffer, then that's going to require trimming and further access to the property.
Gentlemen, I added to condition number 6, mechanical equipment will be located on the southern side of the parcel to be less obtrusive to the condominium to the north.
Again, I move for approval with those stipulations.
We have a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Roll call?
Robert Inserpi,
Yes.
Roger Brunswick,
Yes.
Pete Pastori,
Yes.
Richard Donnelly,
Yes.
Frank Lyles,
Yes.
Chairman Nussbaum.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Berger.
I think we want to take a break.
She's with Morrison.
No more than 5 minutes, so because Roger came in late.
He gets 3 minutes.
Oh, I'll take that. Thank you.
Richard Roger Brunswick.
Nice to meet you.
You bet. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Are you on the LPA?
We'll take a 5-minute recess.
How the hell can he be on the LPA?
Appreciate it.